All right, welcome to the AdaptX podcast, where we have conversations with individuals building accessible businesses, advocating for inclusion, or excelling in adaptive sports. Our intention is never to speak on behalf of those with disabilities, but to provide a platform to amplify their voice and share their ideas towards a more inclusive and accessible world. Today, I'm joined by Mason Metzger. Mason is an award-winning keynote speaker and advocate, integrating universal design principles into comprehensive business strategies. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Communication and Organizational Leadership from Indiana Wesleyan University. Metzger has delivered over 70 motivational speeches, reaching a wide range of audiences. Diagnosed with spastic cerebral palsy and a wheelchair user, Metzger combines extensive knowledge and personal experience to drive strategic improvements. In 2023, he founded Universal Design Works to help businesses enhance effectiveness, fostering innovation, growth, and customer loyalty. Recognized for his leadership, he was recently appointed to the ABLE Authority Board by the Governor of Indiana, Eric Holcomb. Metzger engages with companies to embed universal design and strategic thinking into their culture, promoting long-term success. Mason, thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So what initially spurred your interest in the career path that you've pursued, speaking and supporting businesses in their pursuit of being more inclusive?
Awesome. So what initially sparked my interest in speaking and eventually supporting businesses through consulting was I began speaking in front of people in fourth grade, and then my dream to become a motivational speaker took flight in 2014. And then after graduating, I wanted to find a way to combine two of my passions because I knew I was good at two things. I knew I loved connecting with people, and I knew that I loved helping them to get from where they are to where they want to go, to be who God created them to be. And post-graduating, I looked for employment opportunities in the traditional fashion, and unfortunately, I couldn't find an employer that would provide me the reasonable accommodations I needed in order to thrive. But in college, I worked with the different business units on campus to support people with disabilities and also to be able to thrive myself. And so by doing a lot of advocacy in college, that was another aspect of myself that taught me that this was something I wanted to pursue. And as part of my undergraduate study in communication, I focused on the research aspects of communication. So as part of that, I also studied the application of universal design principles in Christian higher education. So that was part of the experiences that prepared me for the work I'm doing today. And my mission in life as an individual is to equip, engage, and empower people by connecting authentically and setting a positive example. So now, as the Senior Consultant and Chief Strategy Officer at Universal Design Works, our services are designed in such a way that helps our clients to cultivate a lasting legacy and build relationships with their customers in innovative ways.
Yeah, I like that. You mentioned kind of back at the beginning of that your first foray into public speaking was in fourth grade. The first thing that kind of came to mind was that a lot of younger individuals don't quite understand disability, and you had the confidence to still public speak in front of your peers. And I wondered what elementary school, middle school, et cetera, was like for you as a wheelchair user. What were like the biggest challenges that you faced, and what kind of supported you through those times?
The interesting part about kindergarten through 12th grade is I didn't really realize how different I was as a wheelchair user until I got to college and I started to experience the barriers that people with disabilities face, because in general, in K through 12, people were extremely supportive, and I'm not saying that people weren't supportive in college, but what I am saying is as I grew up, I just started to see the world a little bit differently. So that was the biggest difference between my perspective as a child versus my perspective as a college student, and now how much growth I've had as a business owner now too is really exciting. But for the most part, people have always treated me like they would treat everyone else. But what I started to realize is the gaps that exist in the experiences of people with disabilities, since we've had to learn from an early age how to navigate a world that isn't necessarily designed to meet our needs or accommodate our needs from the start. And so that's why I'm so passionate about helping companies do what I do now.
Yeah, what's the value proposition that you try to communicate to companies who maybe don't have any lived experience or interactions with clients or employees with physical disabilities? How do you communicate to them of the value of designing with universal design principles in mind and making their offerings more inclusive and accessible?
So there are two primary ways that I accomplish that. The first way is helping them to look at how to make the environment more accessible using universal design principles. And then the second way is by helping their employees to understand the lived experiences of people with disabilities. And I find in order to increase the empathy and engagement of employees, it's really important to help them understand what their individual mission is and how they contribute to the larger mission of their company as an individual, because when we start to understand ourselves and how we're uniquely wired, that's what gives us the unique lens to begin to understand what it's like to be in the customer's shoes. So that's why one of my favorite topics is the idea of helping people discover what their individual mission in life is, because in my experience, that's been a key ingredient of my personal and professional success.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your process like when you're preparing for a speech to give to a company?
So my process is all of my speeches are customized to meet my clients' needs. I basically have what people would refer to as a speaker menu so that people can see the most common topics I speak about. But in reality, I do a lot of work to understand my client before going into the communication situation and customizing my insights to not only understand who their audience is, but also what that audience needs to hear in order to get from where they are to where they want to go. The specific method of speech preparation I use is um, is called the SCORE method, which was formulated by a comedian named Ken Davis, and it is a method of speech preparation that results in presentations that are dynamic and focused and just enrich the lives of people, which is my ultimate goals of my communication.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to look into that because as I've had some more opportunities to share some of the work that I do with companies, I'm always interested in refining the message that I want to communicate and really making sure that the audience takes away what they need from the presentation, not that I impart what I want, but that's really tailored to what would benefit them the most. Do you have any specific speaking engagement that kind of stands out as most memorable to you?
My most memorable speaking engagement to this point in my life was when I had the opportunity to speak on the floor at the Indiana House of Representatives. In 2017, I represented the Riley Children's Foundation, and I got that opportunity because of that. I was able to speak on the floor about the importance of unity and working as a team to be the voice of the great state of the people that the representatives represent. And so that was my most memorable speaking engagement. I've had several since then, but that is one that will always stick with me because that was really the catalyst of what I'm doing today and also gave me a perspective on what it's like to advocate for people in what what people would probably perceive as high pressure environments. But I've realized if I can do speaking engagements like that, I can pretty much do anything I put my mind to, especially when I have the strength of Christ within me. So it's awesome to see what God has been able to do through my story and what He's currently doing to prepare me for the experiences I'm going to have in the future, which is why it's amazing to be able to join podcasts like this because that's a really important part about getting my message out there and so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, of course. You mentioned how you're able to use your disability and those qualities that you were given to inspire and educate other people. So clearly you're comfortable and confident in your ability and your disability. But was that always the case? Was there kind of like a process of you resenting your disability? Obviously not every day you're going to love your disability. But actually, now that I started that kind of train of thought, I remember reading your LinkedIn post about Disability Pride Month, and I actually found that really insightful, and I enjoyed reading it. So I guess I'd be interested in having you share a little bit about that, the pride that you feel in your disability, the frustrations you've experienced, if you can speak on that topic.
Yeah, that sounds great. So um, I would say that the as I said in that LinkedIn post, the primary emotion I feel regarding my disability is not pride. But what I will say is I I I started my fitness journey like in depth over a year ago, and being able to engage in physical activity with the assistance of my personal trainer has really helped me to be able to cope with my disability in a way that I've not been able to cope before. So it's really important for people with disabilities and honestly anyone in the world to develop outlets so that they can effectively tackle the opportunities that are in front of them. And also, it's really important to focus on the windshield rather than being bogged down by the experiences in your rearview mirror. So that's what I would say. So those are some of the mechanisms that I use or sources of inspiration to really focus on moving forward. And yes, acknowledging my limitations, but not letting my limitations dictate my reality, but using my knowledge of my limitations to craft a dynamic plan so that I can show up effectively for the opportunities that are in front of me. And fitness is part of that. Communication coaching is another part of that. Reducing my stress levels is part of that. It all works together so that I can effectively show up for people.
Yeah, I like that. Like focusing on your own health so you can improve the health of others and improve the success of others as well is essential. Sometimes we in our pursuit of, I guess, helping other people, we sometimes neglect to help ourselves. So I can easily see how that can be applicable. What does your personal trainer do? Since a lot of our audience are fitness professionals, what does your personal trainer do that you find to be most effective? Kind of like what's that relationship been like, and what would make someone an effective adaptive fitness quote unquote professional?
Yeah, it's wonderful. So I would say that when we're looking at what it takes to be an effective fitness professional, especially in the realm of adaptive fitness, it's really important to start the conversation just like you would start the conversation with anyone else. You want to start out by understanding their goals. You want to then understand the pieces of equipment that they desire to use. You want to gauge their experiences with fitness in the past. And then as you build rapport with the person, then you can start to peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, and look into, okay, how does this person's diagnosis impact the way that we're going to do exercises? And you have to just go back to the fundamental principles of exercise and focus on, okay, this is what I know about how to become fit. There's not really any difference between me and this other person. We just may have to do exercises from a different angle, since in my case, we're in the seated position, and sometimes you literally just have to change the angle in order to effectively uh, engage the muscle. So, for example, instead of doing tricep extensions front facing, I do tricep extensions from the side with one part of the rope and pull down, and I'm able to effectively engage the muscle. So you really have to use a combination of critical thinking and adaptability in order to serve any of your clients, especially when we're talking about people with disabilities. And I know that your training program talks about the difference between the medical model and the social model, so that willingness to adapt the exercises and just a spirit of adaptability and teamwork is a crucial part of being able people with disabilities being able to exercise just like our non-disabled counterparts, even though it may take some extra effort. The effort is worth it, and it's really important to teach your clients how to do the exercises as well, so that when it comes time that you might not be the trainer anymore, or there might be someone else, the person can effectively communicate their needs and their capabilities to another person, so that you can continue to build on the momentum that you both created together. And so those are just a few insights that I would have for people who desire to be personal trainers, and specifically people who want to work with people with disabilities, or even other limitations due to the impact of aging and other circumstances.
Yeah, you echoed a lot of the things that we share with, like you said, personal trainers, health and fitness professionals who might want to be able to support these populations but aren't sure where to start. But at the end of the day, it's basically just applying traditional strength and conditioning principles effectively. Whenever we get a new client at the gym, we just try to figure out what movements are available to them. And then from there, like you mentioned having a speaker menu, I have what we call a trainable menu. So someone like you comes and I figure out, okay, can he grip a dumbbell? Yes or no. If he can, okay, these exercises are available. If not, okay, I'm going to have to find a different implement. And then I say, okay, can he lift his arm overhead? If not, okay, overhead exercises are off the table, but all these other ones are. So it's just this process of kind of elimination and coming up with creative solutions. And like you said, for an exercise like a tricep extension, it's hard for a seated athlete because their hands are going to hit their lap when they go to try to extend their arms. So doing it unilaterally, like you can out to the side, is a way for you to get full range of motion through the elbow. So just like coming up with those solutions, I find it engaging as a fitness professional to not always be doing the same thing. When you work with a very homogeneous population, it kind of gets a little repetitive. And I get the good fortune of working with dozens of people who operate differently, and we get to problem solve. And it's kind of like an exciting process. It keeps you thinking, keeps you engaged, and it makes you a better trainer for all populations. Because, like you said, people who are aging, people who are maybe facing an injury or various things, we typically apply a lot of the things that we've come up with for our adaptive athletes to those populations as well, to help them become more active. So even if, I guess, if I'm just speaking to the fitness professional listening, even if you don't currently have people at your gym with disabilities, becoming more well versed in some of these strategies and creative solutions is going to make you a better trainer for all your clients. And yeah, so I think just kind of being proactive in your ability to support people with disabilities can make you more effective.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I totally agree.
What do you think the fitness industry can do better to market to people with disabilities, to support people with disabilities, physically, cognitively, emotionally? We are grateful for the support of our first show sponsor. Resolution Fitness offers leading brand health club equipment and accessories for residential and commercial use. In addition to traditional exercise equipment, they specialize in adaptive fitness products and wheelchair accessible machines. If you're interested in outfitting your fitness facility or home gym to be more accessible, visit www.resolutionfitness.ca or the link in the show notes below.
Yeah, um, so when it comes to doing things more effectively in the fitness industry, gyms and or actually the um so when it comes to the fitness industry, there are many things I think that gyms can do better. The first thing that comes to my mind is integrating universally designed pieces of equipment, because there are manufacturers like Cybex who actually have pieces of equipment that you can use from a wheelchair, but many gyms today, at least the generally commercially available gyms, do not have those pieces of equipment integrated. So that is one area of improvement. And then as I was thinking about other improvements for populations that do not have mobility issues, the main thing that came to mind was the fact that when personal trainers are supporting people who are blind or visually impaired, oftentimes gyms do not have the braille and other things to be able to support these populations as effectively as they could. So that was another example that came to my mind. And then the third example that came to my mind was the need for gyms to integrate bathrooms that are gender neutral to support people with disabilities, particularly because many of us have to require the assistance of another person to use the bathroom, and oftentimes that person is of the opposite sex. So, like right now, I go to a commercial gym that doesn't have a gender neutral bathroom, and my assistant is a male now, but it's still really helpful if we have a, a gender neutral bathroom to give us the time and the space that we need in order to take care of that part of the routine after we leave so that I don't have to wait to do that until I get home.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were to go to a gym for the first time, what would you want a trainer to ask you about your diagnosis?
If I was to go to the gym for the first time, the main thing I would want the trainer to ask is what are my goals, and then what are my current limitations, and then as we build rapport like I mentioned earlier, then we could start to have conversations about my diagnosis, especially when they start to see how the muscles are impacted by topics like spasticity and needing to do exercises from the seated position. Oftentimes, the person with the disability is the best expert on their body and what they need. So having those questions and an openness to asking questions is really important because that allows you to tailor the training program to meet the person's needs and to be able to connect authentically with them, because I think that oftentimes one of the barriers for trainers, regardless of whether you're training someone with a disability or a non-disabled person, is is communicating the exercises in a way that makes sense. And sometimes when you are working with a wheelchair user, for example, you have to make sure the exercises are lined up so that it engages the muscles effectively. So that's part of what made my trainer so good was she was able to adapt to the she was able to look at my wheelchair and adapt the exercises to make sure I was using proper form. And now, because I know how the exercises work, I can then have my care staff help me execute the exercises until I get another trainer. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Language and communication and euphemisms of disability and disability language and disability inclusive language is one of the hardest things for people, I think, especially when that landscape's kind of ever evolving. I know when I was in university, we were taught like person first language is the way to go at all times. And then through a bunch of conversations, a lot of people prefer identity first language. So it's very individualized. And I guess that nuance makes it hard for people. Like people want clear cut directions, like this is what I should do, this is what I should say. And the reality is that it's a little more ambiguous. It's a little more nuanced than that. So I think like that fear of saying something wrong is always weighing on people, I guess, when they're communicating with someone with a disability. Do you have any advice that you could give to someone who might be kind of feeling that way?
I think the primary piece of advice I would give someone who is struggling to figure out how to communicate with people with disabilities effectively is to really look at them as a person and understand that their diagnosis is a part of them, but there might be other factors that contribute to the way that they respond to certain things. So, so trying to understand, yes, the person's diagnosis, but getting to know them on a deeper level so that you can understand, okay, this, you might not get to understand what their traumas are when you first meet them, but oftentimes those previous experiences shape the way that someone communicates toward another person or responds to something. So I would just encourage them to start the conversation by treating the person with a disability the way that they would want to be treated themselves. And when you go into an interaction with an attitude like that, then you can, or a posture like that, not necessarily an attitude, but a posture of openness and understanding. It allows you to work to build bridges, even though when some people talk about their disability, it may create walls, but then you can work to build bridges between those walls, and then as you progress through the fitness journey with that person, the walls start to come down and they realize that their life is bigger than their disability. And like I said earlier, the person with a disability begins to be able to tackle the opportunities that are in front of them better because they've increased their mental capacity through the benefits of exercise. So it's really focusing on building that connection, building that relationship, building trust between you and the client, and then working from there.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are so adamant on that first interaction, demonstrating how much they know, especially in the fitness space. People want to do assessments and all these different screens and stuff to demonstrate to the client that they know what they're doing and that they have some level of expertise. But like you said, I think we advocate for that first session to be more rapport and relationship building versus assessment oriented. Like you said, I want to understand what your goals are, what your limitations are, and which of those limitations actually affects your ability to accomplish that goal. I would imagine in most cases, you're not choosing goals that are heavily restricted by the fact that you're using a wheelchair. Your goals are probably realistic, and the fact that you use a wheelchair is likely not going to impede you in accomplishing those goals. So in that case, the wheelchair just becomes another thing to consider, in the same way that someone recovering from a knee surgery might have to work around that, so on and so forth. So the wheelchair just becomes another characteristic to consider when choosing exercises, but it doesn't necessarily have to become a barrier to you participating. So hopefully people can kind of adopt that lens. What are some of the common misconceptions or assumptions that people make about you because of your physical disability or because of your wheelchair use?
So I think there are several assumptions that people make about someone in a wheelchair. Oftentimes, I think people people doubt someone's intelligence or their ability to contribute to conversations because because they think that because I can't understand the person, I'm just going to tune them out, and I'm not going to tell the person with the disability how these things in these things impact their ability to show up for people because I don't want to offend them. But then when you actually find someone who is willing to point those things out to you, whether it be your executive coach or communication coach or even your personal trainer to some degree, then you can start to be able to work on those things. So in my case, I've really been working on the clarity of my speech lately and the ability to hold my head up straight and look at people and be able to read their social cues and their facial expressions, keeping my eyes open and other tactics like that. And because I've grown physically, I've been able to tackle some of those things that probably would have been a lot harder than they are now because I've improved physically so much. So it's all about being open and honest with people with disabilities and not letting people's assumptions derail your ability to show up for people, but allowing people to speak into your life who you know care about you as an individual and as a professional to help you to be the communicator or the person that God has created you to be, because working on some of those things, which addresses a lot of society's assumptions associated with people with disabilities, has been extremely helpful to me. So I one of the principles that I've used in my life is in a similar way that companies have a board of directors for their companies. I have a board of directors for my life, which means I have different people in my life who I can go to for different aspects of my life so that I can be the communicator that God has created me to be, which helps me to deal with the assumptions that society has about people with disabilities and also effectively traverse the obstacles and the things that society puts in my way of progress.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear how important fitness has been for you, not just from an athletic standpoint, but from an ADL and a just occupational benefit. I think sometimes we assume that everyone has to strive for some sort of performance or athletic goal, but fitness transcends a lot of those things, and it's refreshing to hear you just speak about how fruitful it's been for your life outside of aesthetics or outside of athletics. It's allowed you to operate more effectively and share your message with more people, and it has a compounding effect in that regard. So that's really nice to hear. If people are interested in having you to speak, what type of companies do you typically speak to, and then maybe how would you recommend that they reach out to you? And we can include specific links in the show notes, but
Awesome. So the clients I normally speak to are very broad in nature. I work with healthcare systems. I work with large corporations. I work with small businesses. I work with I basically work with anyone who wants to deliver a more engaging experience for their customers and help their team members to further develop their skills so that they can contribute to their own mission and the mission of the organization. If people are interested in booking me to speak to their group, they can visit my website, masonmetzger.com, and use the Work with Mason button. And then when you fill out that form, it goes directly to my email, and I will reach out to you. And on my website, you can also find under the Services tab a little bit about my consulting practice as well through my consulting company, Universal Design Works. And right now, we're considering a name change to 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 reflect that yes, we serve companies that want to support people with disabilities in their overall culture, but we also want to work with other companies as well on strategic planning and other initiatives. So that's something that my team and I are currently considering. In terms of my plans for the future, I want to continue to build on the momentum that I've created since the beginning, and I'm super excited to continue working with clients through the services I offer through Universal Design Works and through offering speaking engagements.
Awesome. Yeah. And hopefully we're able to share some more information about your speaking and reach some people to help you out in that regard. But Mason, really enjoyed having you. Really appreciate the lessons that you shared and the wisdom that you imparted on our audience. Look forward to staying in touch. We'll include links in the show notes to direct people to your website if anyone's interested in learning more about you or learning about booking an engagement or speaking engagement with you. But again, thanks for taking the time today to share your message.
Awesome, my pleasure. And I would love to learn more about your training program and your gym that you created. So maybe we can set up another
Yeah,
conversation so that
absolutely.
I can learn more about it, because I love the
Sure.
fitness industry, as you can tell, and I love just learning about this industry and the different models that people use. I'm familiar with Turnstone, which is an adaptive gym here in my community. It's an
Yeah.
hour away from my house, so I don't go there, but that's the model I'm familiar with. But I would really
Yeah.
like to learn about your model too.
Yeah, I have buddies at Turnstone actually. EJ Whitney has done some webinars for my company, and then they use the course that I teach for their new trainers on adaptive fitness. So I've had a good relationship with them over the last few years, and they're world class. My facility certainly does not have the funding and the means to build out something as extravagant and adaptive as Turnstone, which is like a beautiful facility, but we make do with what we have. And I think sometimes showing people that it doesn't always require that highly complex and elaborate system to begin to support people with disabilities is another effective message that I want to convey to fitness professionals, just to kind of lower that barrier and some of those assumptions that people might have, where they'll say like, "Oh, my equipment's not correct for someone with a disability," or so on and so forth. I mean, my gym looks very similar to any other fitness facility with a lot of open floor space, which makes it easy for our wheelchair users to navigate. Some free weights, or predominantly free weights with a few machines. But yeah, there's a bunch of different models, and definitely would love to talk to you about that at another time.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the AdaptX podcast. Our effort to amplify the ideas of our guests and create more inclusive and accessible industries is futile unless these episodes reach a larger audience. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please leave us a rating or a review on whichever platform you use. And if you would like to learn more about AdaptX, the course that we teach to health and fitness professionals and the projects that our organization is working on, you can subscribe to our newsletter through our website, www.adaptx.org. Until next Monday.